Okay, let me know if you can't hear me for any reason. It should pop up on the chat for me if anyone pops anything in the chat as well. So welcome today, everyone. I'd like to pay homage to Australia's original storytellers who remind us that storytelling is about deep listening. We recognise Australia's First Nation peoples and First Nations peoples all around the world for their ongoing connection to storytelling, country and culture and community. We also respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're all variously situated and recognise that it was never ceded. And oops, as always, sorry, I'm just trying to get my little thing up. Here we go. As always, you are welcome to just jump in and stop me at any time. If you have a question, or something's not clear, I might ask everyone what their opinion is or their experiences are about things. So it's exciting to hear people share their experience or their experiences in the chat, or if they have any questions. So always feel free just to interrupt at any time. So today we'll be talking about academic job applications and interviews, and many of these processes are the same all around the world. There are a few small differences which I will mention a couple of times in this presentation, mainly between the Australian and the US. But if people who have experienced academic job interviews in other countries and cultures are always welcome to pop in to see what, pop in a comment or tell us about the differences there. So, and I'll also have a really awesome set of questions that get asked often in interviews. And as I've said in my session last week, there are some universities actually have an Excel spreadsheet with the most common questions that get asked for academic jobs at various levels. So for general academic, for leadership roles, for executive academic roles, also for professional staff roles. So if you're applying for a role in a research office, which might seem like an administration role, but is still, you're drawing on your research skills, there's a set of questions for those as well. So I've got the Swinburne ones that I downloaded, and I'll share the academic general ones with you today. But if you are ever applying for a more administration role at a university, let me know, because I can send you the administration questions as well. They don't always stick to these, but they're the ones that HR suggests that we follow. And I have highlighted the ones that I know get asked multiple times. I have been in about six to eight, I can't remember now, hiring panels for academics. So I've been through a fair few. Sometimes I've chaired those panels. Other times I've been a member because it's from my discipline or department. Other times I've been brought in as an external member, which is common. Often you'll have an external member on a panel for academic interviews, and I will take you through that and what the typical panel compositions are as well. But I'll jump in now and start off with some of the places you can find academic jobs. And I'm really keen to hear if other people have got some too. I think that when we were talking to Wade Kelly from Monash, I think he's at Monash now, he mentioned another site which I haven't got included in here because I can't remember what it was. But I always find that the really most comprehensive one is UniJobs, from the Times Higher Education. I've got a link to it here, and I will email out the slides to everyone who's in the session and beyond if needed. And I have subscribed to that, but I do believe you can access the jobs list without having to subscribe. What I get is the subscription that gives me a daily alert service. So I have them alerting me whenever a job comes up. You enter in specific job titles or areas. So I might have creative writing, I might have department chair, I might have lecturer. So you can specify areas of domains or disciplines. You can also specify particular roles. So I just try to keep it general, and I get a lot of stuff that's not really in my area, but it's really useful to see. And I've got one a sample today, but it's not from the Times Higher Education, but that's called Uni Jobs. So I've got the link there, so you should feel free to check that out. Also, other places that you can find academic jobs are advertised. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually doing quite a good job at sending out alerts for jobs in your area. So you can hit a button and subscribe to that, and that is for free. I found that quite good. Facultyvacancies.com is a US-based site, but it has worldwide dissemination. It has jobs from all around the world. So I find that one really interesting, just to see what jobs are going overseas, because I tend to just, I'm not in a position where I'll be moving country, but I, respect that there's good opportunities in there for other people. So I will always keep an eye on that. And that comes into my email inbox as well. And that these sites give you they tell you a little bit about the job, and they give you a link, and then you can hit on that link to go to the original site that offers the job, or you can apply through some of these sites. The Conversation is another quite good place to find academic jobs. Anyone who wants to put their job advertised in The Conversation does cost a fair amount of money. So not all universities will put their jobs in The Conversation, whereas uni jobs at Times Higher Education is kind of cheaper, really, because it goes to a wider number of people. So it's a better deal for unis, and some of them, like LinkedIn and Faculty Vacancies, are free. Also, Seek. These are websites like Seek and Jora, particularly Seek, are very good, and certainly Swinburne advertise through Seek because we have a partnership as well with them. And each university has HR pages where jobs are listed. So all you need to do to find that is just, for example, go into Swinburne jobs. That's it. And then some links will come up, and you might have to click on a few to find the right page, but that gives you a list of all the jobs that are going in academic or in non-academic. So usually there's 2 tabs that you can click. I had a look at the academic ones last night to see if I could scoop up anything that would be relevant for today. And they didn't really, they had one senior lecturer in Indigenous Studies. All the rest were kind of outside our humanities area. And a senior lecturer is a slightly more advanced role. So I'm a senior lecturer. So usually, and I'll tell you about what these roles are, but senior lecturer usually means you've been working in the university system, in the academic system, for a couple of years. But I will show you an example of a PD from a lecturer role and tell you a little bit about the difference between lecturer and senior lecturer. You can still apply for senior lecturer. It's just that there's the expectation, though, that the person will have probably quite a bit of experience. And the university HR pages, if you find something that's interesting there you want to apply for, you just log in and register, and you can just apply. So obviously, my dog barked. She never barks. Obviously, that's something that is free. Also, a really good place to find jobs advertised is in your associations related to your discipline. So there might be things like, for us, for creative writers, Australian Association of Writing Programs, awesome organisation that the eternally awesome Julia is the president of. And that organisation has quite a few social media platforms where they disseminate jobs when they become available. So the social media platforms attached to the associations in your area are quite useful. So I might pause there and ask, does anyone have any other suggestions for where they've seen jobs advertised? And sorry, I'm laughing here that Fiona says she had to present a class for one uni. It was online and 3 a.m. my time. Wasn't her best effort. Yeah, I know the feeling. I try to avoid those English ones that are really hard timed. And that's actually a really good point that I must come back to, that remind me not to forget to say that sometimes, obviously, if you're being interviewed overseas, you're going to be up at a really strange hour. So you may have your PJs on the bottom because it'll probably be by Zoom. Very unlikely they'll fly you there, and dressed up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So anyone have any other ideas about where we can find any academic jobs, any sites that you've seen? No? Okay. I've obviously done a good job of covering those. But really my fave is uni jobs. Really good. But you do, as I said, you can check it out for free. But definitely LinkedIn is also very good. So what do these things mean when you see a job advertisement? I do have some to show you, or one to show you that we'll work through, but I also just want to run you through what the academic levels mean, because these are what you'll see on the job advertisement headings. So they will be advertising for something like lecturer in, so for instance, the one that we've got at Swinburne going at the moment, senior lecturer in Indigenous Studies. A senior lecturer is a level B role. So usually it will have there a letter, level B, level A. So level A is an entry level. So usually level A's tend to not have a PhD. So it's often your first academic role. I started as a level A when my PhD was submitted, but it hadn't come back yet. And when my PhD was submitted, when it got passed, I was able to move up to level B. That's a little bit unusual. That some universities will let you move up once you've got your PhD if you've applied for the entry level, level A. Other universities require you, and Swinburne requires us now, to go through a promotions process. But don't worry too much about that. If you see a level A role, it's a great place to start. And I'll take you through some of the typical level A roles as well. So level A is an entry level. So you're not expected to have had a lot of experience in academia. It has a starting pay grade, and it may usually a level A will start at probably around 80,000 full-time, 40,000 part-time. You can have a PhD for these roles, or you may not. They'll often say PhD preferred but not essential, or they may just say master's preferred. The type of things you'll be doing as a level A are different to a level B. So these levels are set up by the government. They're a centralized system. So it's a kind of, I suppose, a set level of tasks and a set level of responsibility for A, B, and that goes up to E. So I have another chart with all of them on there, but because the one I'll be talking to you about is level A/B, I thought I'd just focus on those. So level B is when you're doing a little bit more. You've got more of a research track record, and you might have some publications or some grants. And each university will have a set breakdown of what level B and level A and level B exactly are. So I'm going to show you some of those breakdowns now. So whenever you're looking at a job advertisement, go to the university that's offering that job and type in the word MSALS. MSALS is minimum standards for academic levels. Every university might move those letters around, but they're generally the same thing because they are set by the government. And so they will tell you what each level, A, B, C, D, E, are required to do. And there's usually a lot of detail about those. So that will give you a bit of a feel for the level of competency and the duties that will be required from that role. Of course, there will also be in the job description a position description, which has some more general tasks, but sometimes you will find that the position description is a bit vague, like the one I'm going to show you today, which is very typical. And the ones at the university, the MSALS listing of duties is more specific. But because you're applying for this and you'd be taking up this job with this position description, it is the position description that is the one that has the duties that you will be assessed against, or that you will be checked for if you have any performance reviews, which is quite common. We often have a check-in 2 years after an ongoing role, because you're on probation for 2 years, which just means, all that means is that you're fine, you're a formal employee, but the university has the option of revisiting your employment at 2 years. It is very hard to remove someone in that 2-year period, but that is why that position description is there as well. So it's really just making sure that there's a clear communication about what the duties are. But as I said, those duties are structured in a somewhat vague way, which will make more sense when I show you. And these are academic jobs, and academic position descriptions are very template driven. And I did actually find some templates from different universities for the different levels, but I've chosen one that has actually been filled in specifically for a role for us to look at today. The templates just really indicate the amount, that the quality and the range of duties and the level to which they should be performed are very similar across all unis at each level. So the fact that there are government requirements and templates from each uni for each level indicates that there is a general similarity. So if you are working at a level A in one university, it is expected, if you're applying for another level A role at another university, then you will have done similar tasks. And if you're going for if you're a level A and you're going for a level B at another university, so if you're going from level A lecturer to level B senior lecturer, then, or lecturer, because level B can also be lecturer, it's a bit confusing, then there'll be the university will have a rough idea of what you did at that other university, because you were a level A and the levels are all the same roughly across the university sector. Now, overseas, they don't have the exact same A, B, C, D, E that we do, because our government have set these, but there are equivalencies as well, and I can talk you through those. So if I just quickly give you a rundown, so what I'm going to give you is a lot of detail about level A and a bit less detail about the other levels. So level A, what that means is that you will be supporting and contributing. You are not expected to be taking leadership roles at level A. You are able to be offered them, and you are able to accept them, and you're able to create your own leadership projects, but the job description doesn't require it. They can't say you failed in this job if you haven't demonstrated leadership, because level A is a beginning role, it's supporting. So you will support and you will get support and get guidance from more senior academic staff, and you're meant to be developing your expertise in teaching and learning with mentorship from others, with support, but you are meant to be increasingly becoming more independent. A level A academic, and this, I think this one might be from Griffith University, but it's very similar to every other uni. A level A academic will normally have completed 4 years of tertiary study or equivalent, so you'd be expected to have a degree and another year on top, like an honours or at least, or a master's. Now, sometimes there are practitioner disciplines where they will offer, say, in video production, where they will ask that they will say a degree is preferred. That's very rare, very, very rare. But practitioner disciplines, we do have a bit more wiggle room. So if you are interested in applying for roles that are related to making things like film, not so much, some creative writing sometimes, but it's a bit more now about
yeah, she's sitting in there.
I think that might be Fiona. I recognise your voice, Fiona.
I'm just gonna call.
That's right. I'm just going to mute you, Fiona. There we go. Hopefully I haven't muted myself. And so you can, you do have the option of entering the academia without a degree, but it's really rare, and why make it hard on yourself? And you've all got one anyway because you're in this Zoom. So you will be contributing to teaching at the institution. So level A's generally do a lot of teaching because you won't usually have a very high research track record. So you'll be doing mostly teaching. And generally with universities, and I'll come to this in a later slide, but usually teaching, if you are given, say at Swinburne, we have 1,800 hours a year that we are meant to fill as part of our employment contract. Usually we'll have some of that taken out for meetings, so 180 hours across the whole year for open days, meetings, all these things that doesn't cover, but that's okay. And then whatever is left is supposed to be divided up between teaching, research and service. So if you've had not much published, you'll have a smaller research allocation at Swinburne. And if you have got a lot published, you will have a larger research allocation and you will have less teaching. Smaller research allocation, more teaching. So it's usually research first, and then teaching is what you do next, and then there's service as well. Other universities divide it differently. They have 20% service, 40% teaching, 40% research, and that is for everyone. Swinburne's a bit different. We work on a research merit-based service. So I will come back to this as the sort of things you should ask about in an interview, but this is why level A's are seen to be teaching machines, because you are not likely to have a long history of publications. A PhD is awesome and is terrific, and you should you should send out publications from your thesis, but it is an entry into academia. It's not seen as the main requirement to get a higher role. It's a base requirement. So you'll also be doing some things like maybe you could be convening at that level A. You might be teaching at undergraduate level, most likely maybe in postgraduate diploma level. If you don't have a PhD and you've got a level A role, or you've got no research allocation in this role, which I'll talk about different roles in a minute, you may not be able to supervise PhDs, but many level A's can. It depends on the employment contract. So that's something that we can ask in an interview, which I'll cover later as well. So the idea is that you are entry level, you're probably going to be doing a lot of teaching. You hopefully will have support for research in some way. Sometimes some universities give you, if your contract is for learning and teaching, you have a reserved research allocation for being a new staff member. Not always, but the focus really is on, for level A, teaching. You're doing a lot of what other academics might see as the grunt work, but many of us really do love teaching, so it's a joy to be doing that. So that's level A. So to give you a feeling, and level A is definitely the title lecturer. Level A is lecturer. There are some variations on that, and I'll run through those according to the position description. And so I just jumped back. Sorry, Mavis, I missed you. Mavis made the excellent point that there are also some really good jobs advertised on TASA, which is the Sociological Association of Australia, and their Twitter platform has some really good jobs going, and they pump out a lot of jobs. So that's an example of an association for your discipline or for a discipline that has a platform that promotes jobs. So level B can be a lecturer or a senior lecturer. It's generally lecturer, and level C is usually senior lecturer. So to make it really simple, let's say level A is lecturer. It's also sometimes called associate lecturer. Level B is also lecturer. Level C is senior lecturer. And the difference between level A and level B is level B, you're doing more leadership. You're managing things more. You're not just supporting the teaching, you're making a bigger contribution to it. You are engaging in independent research. You are your own researcher now. You are not necessarily seen as an apprentice anymore. And you are meant to be doing things like convening units. You might be convening a program or running a program, like being a program director. Level C, senior lecturer, you're really stepping up to making a senior contribution to that, and you are demonstrating some type of leadership within the university and within your community as well. So a level C is a hard one to get. My advice is go for level A's or B's, so lecturer roles. Senior lecturer is a bit of a step up. So you're doing a lot more leadership. You might be expected to publish, for example, level C. The general expectation is that you'll be publishing maybe 1 or 2 journal articles a year and maybe a book chapter a year. Now, journal articles are hard to write. They take a long time to get accepted. It takes around 2 to 3 years to actually get a rolling set of publications happening every year, because things get held up. Books take a long time to come out. I had four pieces accepted within a year. It took them probably 3 years to come out. So you have to just keep rolling on. So the expectation is that you will have quite a bit of research at that level. Level D is an associate professor, and that's supposed to be making a significant national contribution, a superior contribution. Level E is a professor, and that is outstanding. So that's when you are impacting on your field beyond the national, and you are an international leader as well. You have a high level of prestige and you make a lot of money. So to give you the idea of the breakdowns in funding, level A is around 80,000 to 90,000. Level B is around 90,000 to probably about 120. Level C is 120 to just under 140. Level D is about 140,000 a year. This is 1,000 a year. To about 160 to 70. Professor is 170, and that stays stable. Professors just have that one pay rate. So within those levels, they also step up. There are multiple steps within those where your pay increases a little bit each year, but just don't worry too much about that. Just think about that difference in pay. So it's still quite a good way to start. And level A is still a good way to start paying off your HECS as well. So that's a rough indication of the requirements at different levels. So A or B is what you'd be aiming at, unless you've already got significant academic experience and publications. So let's have a look at an example of an academic role. So let's hope that I can get this up. I prepared it, so it should be good. And do pop questions in if you have any as well. See, stop sharing for a minute. Where is it? Let's put it on this one. No. Open. It's probably hiding. Ah, there it is. Hides behind the tabs. Right, so here we go. This is a job that I got from Uni Jobs. It's a lecturer in anthropology, so it's a level B, and it's from ANU, Australian National University. So Canberra, hey Fiona, call out to Fiona in Canberra. So what you can see here is that it tells you the role, lecturer in anthropology. So whenever it says lecturer, you need to check whether it's lecturer A or B. So this is level B. So this gives you our salary package here, 103 to 117. That's pretty good. Plus 17% superannuation. Now, when you have an ongoing academic role, it's usually 17% superannuation, which is excellent. It's really excellent. Normal superannuation is around 9%, or used to be when I started. It's probably gone up a bit now. So what you need to do is check out the pay rate. And why it varies is because of the level of experience. if this is your first academic job, chances are you're going to be sitting on the lower level. If you're currently at another university and you've worked there for 2 or 3 years at that same level, you will probably go up to the mid-range there. Generally, in something like academic A, there are roughly eight steps, 8 pay rises within that small range. So you might get probably another $2,000 a year when you go up, and it's automatic that you go up a step. They're called steps. So at this academic level B, step 1 is 103,000. Academic Bs usually go to step 6. So the top range is step 6, that is 117,000. So you don't have to worry about the steps, but that just explains why there's that range, and you can negotiate for a higher range. We hired the world's most awesome staff member who the job was advertised as a level B. This person was absolutely beyond that. But that was the job we had the funding for. So we arranged for this person to come on board with the very top end of the pay. And I had to get special permission for that. And that person then ended up going for promotion 2 years after they started and went up to the next letter to C. So it tells you if it's full-time or part-time, tells you when it's going to start. And you'll see here, somewhere in here, sometimes at the bottom, there'll be a PD. So it says PD Level B Anthropology. That is a really important thing to look at. I'm going to come back to that. So I'm just going to show you the rest of the role here. Telling you where it is, it's in Canberra. They're usually open for a very short period of time, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. That's the rough amount of time that you will have from when it opens to when it ends, when it closes. Tells you a little bit about the place that the job is advertised in. So Kirsten says, are there still tutor and grading positions? If yes, there are. I have a list of those, so I'll talk you through those. Are they good places to build skills? Look, the tutor and grading positions, which are called various things at various unis, academic fellows, teaching academics, they are a good way to get your foot in the door, but you won't have a research allocation. You'll only be teaching, and your teaching will be across the whole year. So if you've got a full-time teaching job and there's only 2 semesters, you're going to be squashing a lot in those semesters. And a lot of our PhD students have taken those roles. I know 2 of our PhD students have taken from politics, have taken those roles at Melbourne Uni, because it's a job, it gets them started. Once they're in, they can then apply to move out of those roles and apply for other roles, or apply for, depending on the role, apply for a promotion into a role with a research component. So you're becoming a teaching and research academic, not just a teaching academic. But they are fraught in that you do get overworked, you have no support for your research, and if you want to go to the next step to have a research role, or a role that has research and teaching in it, you'll be expected to have some research, yet no one's given you the time for it. So you're doing it on your weekends. So it's a hard slog to move out of, but a lot of people take them on. And when we first started them, at Swinburne, a lot of people that took them on were people that had were really needing regular income. So they may have had caring responsibilities, and they'd be really hard for them to hold a full-time job, or they liked being sessional, but they just were worried about what work were they going to get next semester. Some of them were single parents and they just needed that base income. So that was the kind of first movement of people into those roles. Now we have a lot of people that have PhDs who are wanting to break into academia. Once you're in those, you can still apply, of course, for all the other roles, but it gets you in the conversation, it gets you in the work environment. But they are really, really hard working roles. You've got to really love teaching to do them, and to love marking as well. So I do have a breakdown of those. So if we go back, thanks, Kirsten. If we go back to the ANU page here, it tells you about the university department. Where is this place? Where will you be working? Who are you working with? Who are your people going to be? And then it gives you a little bit in general about what they want. They want you to have a track record of excellence in ethnographic fieldwork and have some evidence of engagement at the leading edge of anthropological theory. So they want you to be up with it, and they want you to have gone out and done fieldwork in this particular job. The successful candidate will take part in reinvigorating the school's anthropology teaching program. That's a code word for you'll probably be having some leadership of convening. You'll be asked to redo units. They might have some units that are not performing well. That this is them saying, we want you to come in and make some magic happen. And they'll tell you usually what level you'll be teaching at, undergrad or postgraduate. And it may be that you'll be teaching out of your area. It says here, and complement existing areas in which the discipline has teaching. So in other words, they're saying, we're going to slot you in. You don't come on board thinking you're going to have everything perfectly matched with your skill set. We might put you in things that are kind of loosely linked. So that is in most job descriptions for academia, because they're telling you we're often a highly changing workforce, and sometimes we need to shift you around a bit. So it's not like, you know, when you're a casual on call and they say you're working at this restaurant today or you're working out at this school today, you won't get suddenly shafted off to another uni or to another campus, but you might be given an extra unit. Like I teach in these research related units as well as creative writing units. I've taught in media units. I've taught in sociology units as well, because it was just available. They didn't have anyone. They said, well, media came out of sociology, writing's come out of media, so they made that connection. So do read that overview spiel, because that will give you a bit of a feel for the vibe of what they want you to do and how flexible they're going to want you to be. Do not think just because you don't have all of these things, you may not have excellence in ethnographic field work. You might have done a bit and it was okay. Still apply, because chances are there may be no one else out there who's got another skill that you've got. Also, sometimes it's very much about the vibe of the person, the fit, the personality. You may be all of these amazing things, but when they interview you, you just may not feel like the right fit. For instance, at Swinburne, in my department, we're very big on collegiality and we're very big on enthusiasm. We're a small team. We need people to say, yeah, I can do this. So if we get a feeling that someone is a little bit more, I will only sit in my box, I won't really step outside my role. No, I only want to teach this one thing that I wrote my PhD on. It's not going to go well. We're not going to hire you. So you need to, I suppose, just manage your expectations about how you might have everything, but if you don't get it, it's just because you may not be the right personality fit. And also that can go the other way. So just because you don't have everything, you should still apply, because you don't know the one that's the most important to them at that time. And they might debate about, well, we've got these 3 candidates, and they'll always have, you know, they'll probably boil down to a short list of 3. There might be an interview. They might call in 5 to 7 for interview. They'll want to boil it down to a short list of 3. We will spend 3 days arguing over which of these 3 people we want to hire. And those people will all have different skills. Those 3 people will have different advantages. And we need to nut out as a group in that interview panel, what is the most urgent one we need. And we'll often say things like, okay, look, this person doesn't have a lot, or hasn't taught at postgraduate, so we probably could start them off in there, but maybe we should just keep Sam in that role for a while, that he's working in that role with us now. Other staff member, we'll keep him in that role, and maybe in 2 years we'll transition him out. And so you may not end up doing postgraduate teaching, because the role, you were a better fit for the other components. You were totally awesome for those. You've had excellent field work, and they'll just adjust the expectations around that, because there is no one perfect candidate. So you should always apply for as many as you can, and don't worry about if you don't fit it exactly. So then it just tells you a little bit about the place you're working. This is where they like to brag. they say, okay, we've got 13 ARCs, you know, we're a hub of vibrant activity, we've got 3 research centres. So this part is where the university is saying to you, come join us, we're really great. So this is them trying to recruit the best candidates. You may not actually get to interact with any of these areas in this college overview, but there is that potential there. So we use that as a lure. So we'll always talk about in the Swinburne ones, the Centre for Transformative Media Technologies, because it's so cool. We'll always also talk about all the different research centres we intersect with, even though the person that we will be giving this role to may not have much to do with them. But we say to you, this is what you could have as part of your pathway down the track. These things are here when you're ready. And then there's usually a contact. You should always feel free to email the person and ask questions or ask to speak to them about the role. That's completely appropriate if you have any questions. Often questions that get asked are the ones that I've got on my what questions to ask in your interview slide, but they can be things like, does this role, what is your university's workload around research? How much research time will I be given per week, per year? What is the soonest a person can go for promotion once they're hired? What sort of policies around Indigenous support do you have? What sort of policies around equal opportunity do you have? So there may be questions you want to ask. A common one that I get asked is when people ring up, if my name has been on the list, on the contract, it's usually people that think that they're not exactly what we're looking for, and they just want to check so that they don't waste their time. And that's fine. Always happy to talk through that with people. So you should feel comfortable calling them to check or emailing them. And so there's usually some information about what they want. They want a statement addressing the selection criteria, and they will want a CV as well. They're usually the 2 things, and a cover letter sometimes. And I'll show you what Swinburne wants in the next couple of slides. So you should look at, they're telling you here, look at the selection criteria, okay? And it even says under here, applications which do not address the selection criteria may not be considered for the position. So you must address the selection criteria. Gives the closing date, and it's quite normal that you'll have a working with children's check as well. So if we have a look at what this selection criteria are, so, okay, the selection criteria are outlined, just checking there's nothing else here, are really outlined in the PD. So always look at the PD. Now, selection criteria might also be called key selection criteria. And people get very confused by them, to the point now that we've actually got something on the university website that tells you how to read these. So ANU's one, it's all a bit of blah, blah at the top, what the role is, what the level is, level B, who you will be reporting to. It tells you about what the role is meant to do. It's meant to be, you're meant to be participating in a department that gives excellent reputation for teaching and research. They want an early career academic. An early career academic is usually someone that has only had their PhD for between 3 and 5 years. There are varying definitions on the time, and I won't go into why. It's just 2 different government documents, really, but it's usually between 3 to 5 years after you get your PhD. And Fiona, I assume that means your latest one. That means you're an early career academic. Just that's what that term means. It is actually a thing. It's not just words they're put to say someone, just starting out. It means from you got your PhD from like yesterday to 3 or 5 years ago. So you'll have to just check if you're between 3 and 5 years, just check that. But you can still apply even if you're outside that. I've had people that were really associate professor level, like really these phenomenal researchers with big grants applying for level B roles, for these sort of roles, because they don't like where they are, or they think their role is they're going to lose their job there because of restructures, and they just need a job. So sometimes you're competing with people that are really high end, but that doesn't mean we're going to hire them. because we don't need that skill set. We need this skill set. So key about accountability areas, read it. That's important. You do not have to answer that. You do not have to actually write about the key accountability areas. This is for your information. And a lot of errors happen when people apply and they think that that's what they have to write about in their response. They don't. What they really need to write about is the selection criteria here. So the role statement, great, that tells you, you know, what's going to be expected of you down the track. So if you can work some of those, if you've got some of those things, you definitely want to work them into your answer in the selection criteria. But what this means is the selection criteria expectation is that you will write a document that addresses these. And the best way to do this is to simply write the top, you know, your name, etc. Selection criteria as the heading. 1, PD in anthropology or cognate discipline at the time of appointment. Bold it, semicolon, write. I have a PhD. I earned my PhD in anthropology in this year. And or you could say, if it's not in your anthropology, it's a cognate discipline. Cognate discipline means it's kind of related. So you may have a PhD in sociology, but you looked at something like cultural practices, which is related, which we might say is kind of anthropological. So you can, doesn't have to be exactly that PhD in anthropology. It can be kind of related, but we're not going to be hiring someone who's got a PhD in computer science, unless you did your PhD in the anthropology of computer science or the sociology of computer science. So it needs to be kind of related to that. But we always say, or similar areas, because we like to keep it broad. So you just usually just write one line in relation to, in answer to that. Second, you will then look at, they want a strong track record of publications relative to opportunity. What that means is that if you had a teaching only role, they know you're not going to have 100 million publications. So you should say that, but they will expect some. And that's great that they've said forthcoming research. So you can list your research that hasn't come out yet, that is maybe pending or that you're sending out. So Damien asks, should we use the KCS response model STAR? Yes, situation, action, result in an academic application. I would advise that, yes, it certainly is exactly what we get given. We get the STAR model, which I've got on another slide. When we're conducting an interview, we're meant to follow the STAR model to get information out of you in an interview. So yes, so what you would want to do for the second one, particularly STAR model would particularly come in on 3 and 4. So the second one, you might say, I have a strong, my track record of publication includes, and you should talk about your publications. I have I have published 2 articles out of my PhD. They were in state what they were in the following journals, which are a tier 1, 2, or 3 journal. Give the journal ranking. Remember, you can look that up on Chicago. And they want a research statement. So tell them, oh, that's not down. Supported by a sample or forthcoming research. So basically, they want to see what you've got published. So tell them about what you've got published and where. And if there's a kind of philosophy of research that links everything in some way. So number 3, you're going to be having a lot more written here, and number 4 and 5, a lot more written in those rather than the first 2. I would expect no less than 3 pages, 2 to 3 pages in response to the selection criteria. Do not be brief. American academics are brief. That their model of application, with these, whenever we get international applicants from the US, they are always too short. And it's very easy for us to say, oh, what was going on here? They're not very interested in the role. They don't care. They haven't written much at all. I don't get a feeling at all from this. But it's just that was the particular, that's this particular culture of application there. So we bear that in mind, but often, you know, if you've got a panel that maybe don't know that, that's a bit awkward. But most of the time there's someone on the panel that says, oh, don't forget the US CVs are really, or criteria are really short. So for the third one, evidence of strategic research plan. So you would want to give here your philosophy of research, what your grand connections are between your research. What are you trying to do with your research? Tell us about the themes. Tell us about who you want to reach with your research. Why is this research important to you? So this is a chance to spin a bit of a spiel. And we want to research statements, including future plans. My research has developed from this to this, so I will build on my PhD by researching these other areas connected to this. I intend to turn my PhD into a book. I put that in there. So, and drawing on the STAR model. So, with these three, the first three, it's a little bit harder to give the situation, task, action, result. But you definitely want to demonstrate that your research is moving forward, and that your research is has potential, and you're growing broader as well. If you've published, you may have in this section in 3, you might want to say that you are interested, or if you haven't already, or you will be publishing in more public intellectual spaces such as the conversation. Or in media, because you believe an academic should be in a position of public engagement to disseminate their research in layman's terms. We love hearing that. We all want you to be Alan Duffy, you know. We all want you to be, you know, being the public face of something on TV in some way. And, you know, you often do get invited. I've been on The Project, I've been on Australian Story, all of those things. And yet they don't do your makeup, just be aware of that. No touch-ups. Number 4, now you're really giving probably a lot more information at this level, because remembering this is really a teaching role. So you really want to emphasize number 4 is teaching. So now I would totally use the situation, task, action, result. Give us a rundown, a summary in sentences of what you've done and what you've taught. Remember, it's all going to be laid out in your CV in a neat order. They can flip back to that, but this is where you talk about it. So tell us about not just I taught in LIT 2004, exploring iconic texts. Tell us how many students. I taught one of the largest first-year units in the program. We had over 300 students. So how important is the program? How many students? I taught that 3 times a year. We know you've got a good turnaround there. And innovations that I introduced to this unit included, so tell us some challenges that you solved. What did you do in this unit that made it special? So it may be that as a sessional, you may not have had as much chance to do that in the whole unit, but you would have done it in your tutorials. I introduced a model of tutorial where I got students to give me each student had to give two updates on their project a semester, and every student had to ask a question. So you are then creating a community practice model, or a community, or a feedback model in a classroom that's efficient, because you don't have to do it all. The students can contribute and they're sharing. So that's something that I'd put in as an innovation. If you improved the practice in any way, or you had a special thing you did, put that in there. So 4 is all about demonstrating a situation you had that you was a challenge, how you improved upon that, what you changed, and what the outcome was for that. Student feedback went up by 10%. Something like that. So it might be that you have start off with your teaching philosophy, number 1, then tell us about the units that you taught in, any innovations. You might have 3 or 4 units that you want to talk about, or you might have undergrad, postgraduate. You might separate those. Also, if you've taught at an outside university level, if you've taught at centres like a community centre or high school, or you've done guest lectures in high school, or for organisations, for Rotary, put that in there too, because that demonstrates that you're able to talk to multiple audiences. So number 4 will generally be at this level quite large. Number 3, it's very important, but you may not have a lot to include here. And obviously with this application in anthropology, they're going to want to see the field work coming in here as well. That's where they'd be putting some of that. And maybe that field work is also in your own research, so it might be coming up in that too. And number 5, commitment to contributing to service roles within and beyond the school. That's really hard to do if you haven't had a service role. A service role is something like my role, Academic Director of Research Training. Then that is a service role. Mavis asked, does VET teaching, which used to be PAVE teaching, TAFE teaching, count towards academic teaching? Absolutely. In this, we are really interested in teaching overall. So I taught at PAVE and TAFE and VET. I always put that in my CV because it shows a different sort of teaching skill. So yes, that absolutely counts. And we had, I think we had for one of the jobs we advertised, I think we had a teacher who was based in VET, PAVE/TAFE applying. And that was, didn't matter to us that they hadn't taught at undergrad level. So it depends on what's needed. But yes, you put everything in. When you are starting out, it's better to put as much teaching experience and research experience as you can in there. So community centres and guest lectures, if you've done guest lectures, say what the guest lectures were in. I lectured in 19th century domestic experiences, women's domestic experiences as represented in 19th century literature, something really narrow. So you should definitely put that in there and say what it was. And so then we get a feel for all the different things you might have done. So number 4 might be a whole page, or it might be 3/4 of the page. It's most likely to be the largest one. So number 4 will be the largest on your document. Number 3 will be the second largest, most likely. So contribution to service roles. So if you are doing something like if you're on a committee, so if you put your hand up to be on a committee, and we do have sessionals and academic tutors, so the teaching only roles on committees, then put that down. The challenge with the teaching only roles and sessionals is you don't get any payment or workload to be on these things usually, but if you've been on them, put it in. It looks really good. And so things like beyond the school, so you might have if you worked in an outside organization and you were a treasurer, or you were working in an organization and managing their social media, you know, why don't you put that in there? It's not a formal university service role, but you've got to put in what you've got. And so formal service university roles could be, trying to think of some more things like you know, maybe you were doing WIL coordination, workplace integrated learning supervisions. They're an unusual one that can go into teaching, but you can also put that as service maybe. So that one's a bit trickier, but that is really focused on things that are not focused on teaching, that are not focused on research, but they are about providing some type of support for someone. So academic director research training, I'm providing support for you most of the time, unless I stuff up. And that means that I'm in a service role. Other service roles I've had are on the academic courses committee. I'm on that now at the Senate level. But you know, it may be that you might be could easily be on a course advisory committee. We ask for people that have been in a program. So we ask our previous graduates to come on and to help us evaluate whether our course is current or not for the current marketplace, for the current work experience that the students will have. Sometimes we'll ask the sessional to come on board to get feedback on the teaching conditions. So those type of things are also, you might be on the the equal opportunity committee as well. Can't think of the right name for that. Accessibility committee. So there's all of those things. And that will probably be your shorter component, unless that's been unless you've been really interactive. So Damien, you'll probably have a lot of contribution to service in there. And you might have done that as part of other jobs as well. So it's the kind of things that were focused on supporting, helping people outside your core teaching role. And number 6, you see only 6 selection criteria. Sounds kind of, and they sound kind of vague. A demonstrated high level of understanding of equal opportunity principles, and policies, and a commitment to their application. So you would answer this by demonstrating that you have activated or have included equal opportunity in your lectures. So you may always record them so that students have the opportunity to listen if they're not able to attend. You may have additional support classes running for people that have mobility issues that can't come to class because they are unable to drive because they have a back injury. So thinking about how you can show that you have made accommodations as a natural way of working, and that it's just exactly what we should be doing. So in order to overcome maybe some things that might stop people from being able to participate fully. So there are the 6 selection criteria. Now, it's quite amusing, I suppose, when you consider all of this other material up the top, like the role statement. We want you to undertake high quality research. We want you to secure external funding. We want you to contribute to teaching. But it says may include. We want you to supervise students. Now, but you don't actually have to answer that. However, what you could do, and I would recommend you do, is when you are answering the selection criteria 1 to 6, you use these terms. You use these role statements as a guide to what to say. Oh, I don't know what I can say for contribution to service. Let's have a look at what they say in these dot points and what the general role would be. Contribute to the running of the school, college, university through administrative roles and participating in meetings and committees. If you've done any of those things in other ways, through private practice, through corporate work, then you could include those in there to say, I have demonstrated that I am willing to take these roles on and that I'm very capable because I have done them in these other contexts. So you use those as a way, I'm sure there are, Jamie, you use those as a way of these other parts of the position description to find the language, to find the hints of what they want so that you can use those to answer the selection criteria. Now, if I could find one of my old job applications, I'd be very happy to share them with you. I can't give you other people's because they're confidential. So if I can rouse one up from computers from dinosaur era, I will. And you'll notice that they have here academic minimum standards. So again, the M cells, they are pointing to their own ones here. So you should have a look at those. So that gives you a feel for what the real thing you need to answer is. And at Swinburne, we have some suggestions about how you can package that together. So I'm going to just change my screen sharing now. See if there's a way I should be able to do it without changing, but I will just go back to my slides. Okay. So that was the position description. So I'll just leap forward and then I'll pause for a moment. So that's what we ran through. These are the position descriptions. This is the selection criteria. You must always speak to those. So before I jump into that, I'm just going to show you, I'll come back to my other slides, but this is from Swinburne's website. They tell you how to apply, what it all means. And we asked them to put this up there because we had many great people applying that might have just finished a PhD and they didn't understand this kind of hidden set of rules around answering the selection criteria, or the key selection criteria. not the areas of responsibility. So they've made it clear. So Swinburne will tell you, include a cover letter. So you should, wherever you apply, should always include a cover letter. And that the intention is to formally confirm your interest in the specific position I wish to apply for. Tell them what it is that you're going for. And that's important because sometimes these roles are actually advertised as A/B. And how the position description for the A is going to be different to the position description for the B. Position description for the one we looked at was B. A would be a lot more introductory, requires a PhD. Maybe there's no further publications required. So in the cover letter, that is where you say which one you are applying for. If there are two levels, if it's lecturer A/B, that means they are looking for one person and that they will be happy to go either with A or B for the right person. Doesn't mean they're offering two, means that they will vary it according to the skill set of the person they want. So you need to tell them which one you're applying for. If there's no way in hell you're going to get B, then why not apply for A? Why not? But don't be afraid to step up into B if you meet some of the criteria. So that's why the cover letter is useful. It tells them which one you are applying for. You can just, it says here, confirmation that you've supplied all requested documents. We don't necessarily put that in our cover letter. We probably should. It's more a kind of summary of who you are and what you do. I'm really interested to hear what everyone's got to say about cover letters because many people have done a lot of training in those in this room, I'm sure. What do you feel should go in a cover letter? Throw it open to comments. Any thoughts? Thank you. Okay. Damien says, why you're interested in the role in the organization? Yep, the why. I wish to apply for this role. This role interests me because I feel that I'm passionate about this role because. And that's often a question that will come up in the interview, of course, as well. Why are you interested in this role? And I don't think it's on the list of questions that Swinburne provide. I didn't see it when I looked at them and included them, but I know I've asked that. And it's a bit of it's really just it's just as a question in an interview, it's a bit of an icebreaker, really. We know why you're applying, because you want the job. You want to get into the industry. But yes, so it's good to explain specifically if there is an area that connects with your passion in some way. Kirsten says, cover letter versus resume. This is the rule I was taught in non-academic recruitment. Some people are resume people and some people are letter people. Thus, the cover letter should have highlights of your resume for this role. Yep. Yep, definitely will send that to you, Sarath, no problem. And yes, that's it. That's very true. I find that most cover letters do a I'm applying for this, I'm interested because, and then they give a summary of the main points. And I tell you, when I'm in the interview and we've interviewed 7 people in one day, I've got a pile of applications, because often, I mean, now we tend to work off computer, but sometimes we still print them out. Often we will go back to the cover letter to get a quick reminder of, okay, what are the key points about this person? You may only have maybe 1 minute after you've looked at all the applications at home, all good, you've gone through them over the weekend, you've interviewed the people that's run a bit over time, you've only got like maybe, and you've had a chat about the person you've just interviewed when they've left. You might only have 1 minute before the next person's ready to come in. So you're quickly going, okay, now who's this person? Who's the next one? What have they done? And I always highlight all the resume things that are important for me when I'm looking at the applications. I write notes at the top so that I can distinguish between the candidates and what I want to know about this candidate. But the cover letter does that often quite well. And so, you know, give the kind of key highlights of what you've done. And resume is, there's usually no limit. You know, a lot of academic resumes are like 10, 15 pages. You might find when you're starting out, it's maybe 3 or 4 pages. That's fine. And I gave a session last week about breaking up your publications. Don't do your publications chronologically. Don't mix in something for a newspaper with something in a journal article, with a book chapter, with a letter to the editor. You need to segment them under books, book chapters, journal articles. That is the academic way. So I did a session on that last week, but I'm happy to re-talk about that another time. But your resume should be lined out in that way. So usually those are the three documents: a cover letter, a resume, a CV, and the response to the key selection criteria. Now here we go. Damien says, yep, having sat on a lot of recruitment panels, a good cover letter might spark interest in a candidate that doesn't have all the necessary skills. That's a terrific point. Passion can take you a long way to getting in the room. Absolutely. And, that's something that this also gives you the opportunity in the cover letter to explain any gaps as well. If you've taken maternity leave, if you've been working in industry for a while, if you've worked overseas, if you've been incarcerated for some reason, then having worked with prisoners and working with them on the outside, we have to explain this gap in some way. So that's a really good opportunity to shape the narrative. Kirsten says non-academic. It's great. Non-academic is terrific. Many employers take the position that skills and experience can be gained and attitude is everything. Yeah, absolutely. I have to tell you that I have been on interview panels. There were 6 of us. It was a high role. I mean, I did the role for a number of years, so I didn't find it that high. After you've done it, it's like it's another job, right? But it was above an ABC. Actually, we were hiring a professor. That's right. The level was professorial. So I'm not a professor. So I did the role. I did the duties attached to the professor label, but I'm not a professor. So as part of that, we felt that, there was a big discussion about how we'd only interviewed a small number of candidates, which is never sensible. But anyway, it wasn't my decision. And some of them pulled out because they got other jobs. So they were, some of them were just didn't have the level of leadership skills needed to manage 30 people. That was not evident in their CVs anywhere. None of them. Yet they were the ones we had to hire someone from this range of, say, 3 people, 2 people. We have to hire one of them. Should we re-advertise? No, it costs too much money. And it's insulting. It's a reputational damage to the people that have applied. They will never work for Swinburne again. They won't ever apply again because they said, I applied, you didn't take me that time. Why wouldn't you take me again? So what was decided is that the successful applicant would get mentoring and leadership. So sometimes, yes, they absolutely do make that decision, but it's a really debated one. And, it needs to be noted and supported. Nobody wants to hire someone who's going to not be able to do the job or who's not going to be able to cope with the job, especially academic jobs. They're like, sometimes they're like a snowball of work at various times. There's a lot of problems in these roles sometimes, depending on the role. So, you need to make sure that if the person isn't appropriate, then they will get support. So, yes, I absolutely agree. Sometimes that is a way of communicating that in the cover letter. Damien says, agree 100%. We'll always take the good attitude with a few gaps than a bad attitude, wrong fit. Yep, ticks all the boxes. To give you an indication, we advertise a level B academic role. We had 70 applicants for this role, and actually we did 2 another time, the same thing, another year later, same 70 applicants. We could probably easily have interviewed 10. We whittled it down for 7 on our shortlist. We interviewed all 7. And then we got another shortlist down to 3, and we interviewed those 3, 2 or 3. So that was really about finding out the attitude, those last 2 interviews. So attitude is really important. So I'll pop back up here and just run through these quickly for you. So when you answer the selection criteria, as I said, number them and answer them one by one. Don't make it a big, long essay without subheadings. 70 applicants. We are going to read 70 CVs of 10 pages. We're going to read 70 position descriptions of, you know, three to 5 pages. So please make it easy on us. Write in full sentences, but don't create, so don't use too many dot points, because the point is that we can see the dot points in the CV. So just putting dot points, what we can't see in the CV, but you're better off kind of writing a bit of a paragraph about it. Mix it up a bit. You can have tables and charts if you want to, but that's the sort of thing you might want to put in the CV. So it's really challenging to work out how to get that right mix of paragraph flow. And you can use buzzwords. So industry engaged teaching, you know, pedagogical excellence. I'm an agile teacher. That's great, but come back to the STAR, S-T-A-R, which I'll talk about again in a minute. Tell us, give us an example. Don't just use the buzzword, because it doesn't mean anything without the context of an example. Give us an example of how you are agile. Give us an example of how you had good pedagogy, how you taught different ways of knowing and being. Tell us what that means. Show us an example. And focus on projects and outcomes. Don't be vague. You know, my teaching is excellent. My teaching scores are really excellent. I'm very innovative. Vague. Tell us examples of this. You know, 70% of my 80% of my students rank me as a great teacher. I was nominated 6 times for Best Teacher of the Year, something like that, as a sessional. And explaining the significance. What impact has your innovation or your experience given to others? What change has it made? What impact have you had on others? That's in that selection criteria. It's a way to answer that. Think about impact, significance. And I've talked about the commitment to service roles. And as I said before, give numbers of students, be confident giving metrics of publications. I published 1 article in a prestigious book publisher, give the book publisher company, in a high-ranking journal, Tier 1 or Q1 if you're using Scrimago. If your journal isn't prestigious, but it used to be, if it's been downgraded, you can say, I published in a Q3 journal, which was maybe it was a Q2 journal when you sent it out. So you can manage and massage the narrative, any awards, etc. So I'll quickly run you through the different types of roles. So there are teaching and research roles, which are generally, you have to kind of check. Generally, they'll talk about research. A teaching and research role talks about research. That means in that job, you will be given a research allocation of some sort. You will be given time set aside to research. It's up to you to manage that. I have had 57% research allocation some years, and I just did no research when I had that. It's based on past experience. I published a whole bunch of stuff, had really high research allocation. I went into a different role, was swamped off my feet, got nothing done. The university will not be happy with me over that, because they gave me that time, even though it's after I published, but it's like giving me a reward for the work I've done, with the promise that, and the expectation on me is that I will keep producing at that level. So research means you are giving maybe a 1 day a week to research, but you can be called out of that research day at any time. You have to be still available. But that is the point, okay? Teaching and research role. And it will have a research allocation. It will ask about publications and grants. If it asks about scholarship is different to research. Scholarship is very sneaky of the university's part, and the unions are never happy with this, and I completely support that, is that scholarship is seen as when sometimes you might be publishing about your teaching, but it's not really research. So they might talk about in the next job, research fellows, research only roles, when the last one, research assistant roles. No, actually it's the next page. Sorry, I probably put them in the wrong order. So be careful when it says teaching and scholarship. Just ask, do I get a research allocation? It should be really teaching and research. So I'll come back to what that means on the next slide. Sorry to jump around. And so research fellow, a research fellow or research only role is when you're only doing research. You're not meant to teach. These are really hard to get. You're pumping out publications. You may be put on a team because they need to increase the publications that come out of them. The university wants to increase its metrics. Professors are often research only. You might be working on one project only. You're working on the urban design project. Your job is to pump out research. Sometimes they do have these roles in teaching units, like in learning transformations unit or a kind of a university teaching support unit. They may have one staff member whose job it is to publish about teaching, and that might put that under a research fellow. It's unlikely that you will get a research fellow role, but you never know. If you've got publications after your PhD, you could get that. It's a bit like a postdoctoral fellowship. So research assistant roles are what you can do now. That's when you're giving support and assistance to the various other academics that are working in that area, and you are not teaching, you're helping them develop publications. You may not get your name on those publications. You ideally have in vivo and SPSS.
There are no samples in there. I was going to show you samples. Did you ever see samples of the uniforms?
I will just see how I can mute.
Have a seat, I'll be back.
Up here. Okay, there we go. So other roles, teaching intensive, academic tutor, these are the ones that Kirsten was asking about. These are teaching only. So they can be called teaching intensive, academic tutor, or teaching fellow. They are teaching only. They have no research time given to them at all. They say scholarship, you don't really get any, it doesn't mean research. You get no teaching, no research time. Your workload can be squashed. It's very hard to, sometimes they'll give you a year's equivalent of same amount of hours, as I've got 1,800 hours a year. They might want you to do 1,800 hours of teaching a year, but there's only 2 semesters. So you're going to be working really, really hard and doing a lot of teaching. It can be hard to get promoted out of these roles because to get promoted to the next level, to get a research allocation, a learning and a teaching and research role, you need to have something published. These roles don't give you any work time to get published. However, you do get a regular income. You get sick leave, you get annual leave, which you don't get when you're a sessional. It's built into a higher pay when you're a sessional, but you don't technically get those. You can't apply for annual leave. But you only can often, with annual leave, when do you take it? If you're basically going to be taking it when you're non-teaching anyway. So you're kind of like probably feeling in mid-semester you're kind of having a rest anyway. So there's a big challenge around when to take leave because you can't take it when you're teaching. Sick leave, of course, you can take at any time. Sometimes at some universities like Swinburne, if you've been an academic tutor for, if you've been a sessional for 3 years and you've worked 70 hours a year for 3 years in a row, you're able to automatically get one of these roles. The only way we can stop you is if you've totally bombed on your student feedback. So once you're in and you're getting 70 hours over 3 years non-stop and your performance is good, under the union agreement currently, you can apply and you can get an academic tutor role. We cannot stop you. But it is a really hard role. It's a lot of teaching. And the difference is sessional, which a lot of you, some of you may be doing now, which is you're just basically paid for the 12 weeks to teach in the classroom, and there's marking paid extra, and there's additional hours built in for preparation. And sessional looks like a good rate, and sometimes they're advertised for sessionals in the same places that you'll see academic roles advertised. But it looks like it's well paid, but it builds in. It's supposed to build in superannuation, annual leave. Well, it doesn't build in superannuation, annual leave. Makes up for having no sick leave, and it includes preparation. So you're probably only getting about $50 an hour when you work it all out. And you get roughly 7% superannuation with the sessional roles. So they are casual. They are sometimes advertised. So what the time fractions means, and then I'll jump into the questions that might get asked in interviews. Time fractions are 0.1 is full time, usually 7 to 7.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. But in reality, sometimes you're working on weekends, but you shouldn't have to. Sometimes it's the nature of the roles. 0.8 is 4 times a week. 0.6, now I'll say this, but it really means equivalent time. So 0.6 is equivalent of 3 days a week, so 21 hours. And 0.4 is equivalent of 2 days a week, so 14 hours. 0.2 is 1 day a week. If you've got 0.4, you may not be coming in 2 days a week. 0.4, 14 hours might be spread across the whole week. You might be doing 2 hours a day. So you can't necessarily assume it's exactly in those days, but that was kind of the vibe of it. You've got roughly 2 days if you're a 0.4, you've got 1 day if you're a 0.2. If you're a sessional, we don't talk in fractions, we talk in hours. So, and there's some information about key selection criteria on the Swinburne website. So just giving you a quick rundown of if you do get called in for an interview, what to do. You always dress up. Sounds, be surprised. So, you don't have to wear a suit. It always looks good. Some people wear smart casual. It's up to you. I've had people in Hawaiian shirts apply. It's up to you depending on what you're comfortable with. And I always suit up when I go for an academic role. If you get a call, you can ask to come in. You can ask who's on the panel. There will be a panel. It'll be at least 2 people. You can ask how long the interview is going to be. Ask how many people are on the panel and who they are. It may be more likely to be roughly 3 people on a panel for a level A or B role. Up to 6 people for professor. Often 3 or 4 for associate professor. But you'll find that there's between 2 and 4, probably 3. Ask them, do I have to do a presentation? Am I required to do a presentation? Often in the interview space, it might be half an hour. We will ask you to do a 10-minute presentation. And that 10-minute presentation covers, might be something like, tell us about your research, or tell us about a teaching problem that you've solved. So I've got some examples of those on the next page. Always prepare when you're going into the interview how you're going to explain the awkward gaps in your CV, because people will be wondering and they'll try to ask around about ways. Also, if you are asked to present, just remember the basics. It's going to be 10 minutes usually. Might be 5. 5 is hard. Might be more like to be 10. Keep it, just accept that you're not going to get everything you want in. Just go slow. Don't have too much on your slides. Do not go over time. Do not be that person that says, oh, I've only got 3 more slides, and then keep going. I remember every single person I've interviewed that's done that. If you've got 1 more slide, okay, time yourself, because you're going to be doing a million of these like I do, and I still can't keep to time. I'm not too good. I haven't quite worked out the hour and a half yet, but I'm nearly there. So if you can't do this in your interview, then it's going to be, how are we going to do this? How are you going to do it in the classroom? So, we are forgiving, but the expectation is 10 minutes. We have a lot of questions we want to ask you. Now, don't read from a paper if you're presenting. Please do not. If you've got people, you've got slides, don't read, speak to the slides. You're meant to be a professional communicator. Speak to the slides. Be informative and dynamic, but be relaxed. Don't be monotonic. Don't scare them by being over exuberant. Just be confident and warm, and just be relaxed. You are good at what you do. Don't be afraid to live in that space. So the type of things you might be asked to give a presentation about could be philosophy of teaching, philosophy of research. How would you teach, one of them that we asked, how would you teach data journalism to a maths adverse group of undergraduates? This was for a data analytics position in media. Could be on a teaching challenge, could be on your research portfolio. So telling you quickly here about the types of questions that you will get asked in interviews. We do work off the STAR model. The STAR model is when we need to hear in your answer, when we ask you something, we want to hear a solution or a problem that you've encountered. Always try to give an example and then tell us step by step how you solve that. So if you look at some of the questions, and there's quite a few, but I've outlined the ones we tend to ask, but I put them all on the slide. These are from Swinburne. It's this massive spreadsheet, so you can read through them. But examples, give an example of how you've adjusted your, sorry, I've got so many slide things open here, your educational approach to enhance student learning. That would never be the first question. The first question is more likely to be, tell us about why you're interested in the role. And then you might find a different person in each room will ask a different question. Okay, I'll ask the teaching questions. We'll work that out ahead of time. So the chair will usually start, introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about the department, about the role, and then you smile and nod, and then the question will be usually, well, tell us about why you're interested in this role. Next question will be, okay, that's great. You might be then asked to do your presentation if you're asked to do it. Well, then it might be, I'm going to ask you a question about teaching. Give me an example of how you've adjusted your educational approach to enhance student learning. That's a really vague one. It could be, give an example of a time that you have created that you've solved a teaching challenge. Tell us about a teaching innovation you've done. So if it's related to research, it could be something like, give an example of how research plans and outputs have enhanced your teaching. So sometimes we want to see how the teaching connects into the research, how the research connects. Tell us about a time you've collaborated with other faculty in other disciplines. We've asked that one before. We've also asked, give an example of how you've displayed leadership within your role. Now, we may not ask leadership if you're a level A. If you're going for a level B role, we might ask about leadership. Can you give an example? I'm going for the yellows. Give an example of where the expected standard was not being met by one of your students, and how did you deal with this? In other words, tell us about when there was a problem in the classroom and how you dealt with that. So I would never ask it that way. I would say, can you give me an example of when you had a challenge in the classroom where maybe the students weren't really performing the way they should be? How did you resolve that? I will always say, take me through the steps of how you resolved it. Because if I don't, person tends to babble on for 5 minutes and doesn't really tell me how they did it. So I want to know that working's out. So remember, the STAR model is give actions, give the steps of how you worked through this. Tell me about your teaching methods. Tell me about your teaching philosophy. Tell me about your teaching goals. I would never ask all three together. Usually we'd kind of ask one. Teaching philosophy. Can you give us an example of how you've applied that? And, what outcomes did you get from that? We might ask you, tell us about a time when you had to bring together a diverse group of students to achieve a particular outcome. In other words, tell us about a time that you had students working in teams, and what were your strategies for making that a really positive experience for the students? So we've been given these as the suggested starting ideas, and we kind of word them in a warmer way normally. And how do you ensure everyone contributed if it's teamwork? So you can see we're asking about the common teaching problems here. We might ask you about, tell us about a time when you got negative feedback. How did you deal with that? We've all had bad feedback in our teaching. Happens. Sometimes units just fall apart. Sometimes the cohorts hate us for some reason. Sometimes we are just not on our game. There's a problem. Technology blew up. The software suddenly was no longer available on the market. So give us an example of that and tell us what you learned from that. Because we want to see that you are adaptive and that you are responsive, you are reflexive. That's what we're looking for here. That you have a vision and that you are understanding how you can, and that you're not that set that you're just going to keep trying to teach something that doesn't work, that you adapt it on your feet. And the reason we ask that is because sometimes you've been teaching in a unit for 3 months and then it gets scrapped. It gets pulled out of the program. You've been teaching in a unit for 10 years, it gets scrapped. We need people that can adapt because it is an intensely changeable environment. Are you able to provide an example of where you've introduced your own innovation to teaching? Tell us what you did and tell us the impact, the outcome, the action. I did this, the steps, I did it this way, the effect. It resulted in this. Student feedback went up 10%. 5 students got jobs out of this. They emailed me later and told me a year later, I got jobs because of that thing you taught us in class. Sometimes we want to know if you're going to be okay teaching something that we think maybe you don't want to teach. So, we need you to teach, Carolyn, we need you to teach descriptive statistics. That's part of the job. It's a new unit in creative writing. How do you feel about that? How would you approach that? Give me some ideas about how you might teach that. and I would run from the room screaming. But sometimes there's things that, you know, if you're coming in at an entry level, chances are you're going to get the stuff that no one else wants to teach. So it could be, you know, that big first year unit that nobody wants to teach because it's exhausting. What are your biggest challenges within teaching? So we need you to be honest, but you can put a positive spin on that. Tell us about a time you've successfully managed a difficult student. And sometimes we ask the big daddy of them all, which is this one. Tell us about a conflict that you were involved with in the workplace, and how did you deal with or resolve that? This question stumps virtually everyone we ask, even though, like, you know, you should be expecting this. I was asked this and I knew it was coming, and I had a real problem because my biggest conflict was with the person that was in the interview room with me. Really difficult person back many years ago when I was interviewing for something. So all these awesome examples I could give, I couldn't because that person was sitting in the room. So what you need to do is expect this sort of question. Now, most of the time people will bring up an example of a student plagiarizing. And that's okay, but you can do better. Do not ever say that you are never having conflict with others. I don't know. I never have conflict with others. We know you're lying. It's just not possible. And if you aren't lying, then clearly you piss people off and you don't know it. So just you know, use this as an opportunity to show your problem-solving skills. A good one to use is, well, look, you know, we were working on a team and, you know, we had a difference of opinion. People are very passionate in this team, and, you know, some of that passion, you know, spilled over into email communications that got a bit out of control in the evenings. You know, I understood that, and, you know, this is, you want to make it that this is not you. So I understand where, you know, some of those staff members were coming from. And, you know, we just accepted that, you know, I put myself in their shoes, and then I emailed them the next day and I said, okay, let's meet halfway here. So that's a common example, that somebody's in a team is not functional for some reason. They're upset, difference of opinion. So you can say that. Artistic differences, different points of view. We manage this by finding the middle ground. Or, you know, I said to the person, okay, let's split the task up. And, you know, you might want to add something in like, I thought through why the person would be reacting this way. And I realized that they were new in their role and they wanted autonomy. They didn't want to be told what to do. You know, they were earning $90,000 a year. And well, I know that's an entry-level salary, but they were really vigorously determined that, you know, they were going to teach their own unit and they didn't want anyone else in this unit. And, you know, we had to understand that they needed some autonomy. So we gave them some autonomy while being there for a support. So sometimes you can also spin it around to be, okay, well, what was at stake about this person? Why is this person micromanaging? So that's often another one that comes up, gently described. And we might say, oh, well, this person is the person that will be held responsible if the project doesn't achieve its clear outcomes. So, you know, we respected that. And so we built in more meetings where we demonstrated the project was on the way. So you need to show how you understood where the problem was coming from, who the problem person, or what the problem person was feeling, and how you mitigated that in some way. That's a very common one. So you can also, if you don't have any, you can use the old student plagiarism one, but, you know, that's great, but that's a fallback. So, sorry, other ones, I think I've covered them all. Other ones to think about, I'll just run through those other yellow ones. They might ask you what your research agenda is, etc. So I'll let you go through those and have a look. There's way more than you'll ever need. One tip related to the second last yellow one, how does your research align with that of the university's strategic priorities? So always know what the 2025 vision is, the next vision for the university. They will always want you to tie that back in some way. They want to see that you've done your research about Swinburne. Don't wander into the interview not knowing what units are taught. Don't say you want to teach anthropology if there's no anthropology taught. You know, you have to SWOT up. Look at what's taught, make notes. What units are taught? What are the majors? Where are you likely to be sitting in this? What interests you about the uni? I really love the idea of the Centre for Transformative Media Technology. Sounds really exciting. I'd love to see what they do or become involved in that one day. I'm really excited at the university's strategic focus on workplace integrated learning, a job for every graduate. So you have to look at the university's policy direction documents. So the horizon and vision documents. Yep, okay. So wrapping up, just a couple more there. What should you ask when you're in an interview? Because you get asked the questions, but you can ask them too. I would advise you ask about how the workload is calculated for research or teaching. Is there a research allocation for teaching? Or what do you mean by scholarship? How do you define scholarship in the context of this role? Always define it in the context of this role so you don't sound like, so it's not a dumb question. Everyone should know what scholarship is, but what does it mean in the context of this role? If it's a teaching and research role, how is the research allocated? How is the workload for the research managed? Is there a minimum or maximum number of hours I'm going to teach? Is there any startup funding or research support funding? You can ask about money. That's an important one. Everyone asks about that. If they don't, we know they're really desperate to get the job. Is there any startup funding or research support funding? If often new staff might get between $5,000 and $10,000 in the old days, probably not so much more now, not so much now, but you never know, you should ask that. How many people in the department? They might tell you at the beginning. When can I go for promotion? You might want to know other important things like what are the childcare facilities? Is there parking on campus? If you have a special need, ask about the requirements you need to have that. Am I able to get, I've got RSI, I've got a hand injury, am I able to get a voice recognition software? We're not going to not hire you because you have RSI, so it's better to, you don't have to state these things in the interview, but, don't be afraid to, because we're an equal opportunity employer. But draw on your past experience about that too. If you find that there's a reaction in the room when you say that you have a particular condition, you have to make your own decision about whether you want to reveal that in the interview. What's the work from home to work to office ratio? Will there be in an open office plan? These are the things you might want to ask. Wrapping up, so I'm really gonna have to master this hour and a half. I'm failing dreadfully at it. I dropped my slides as well this time. So in the interview, when you're asked a question, do not go on for too long. Answer, but read the room. There's nothing worse than someone who's keeping on with the same point, and we're trying to interrupt and they don't pick it up. So, you'll see, we start shuffling, we start looking at the next question, we start going, okay, and we're trying to break in. So read the room. And always answer with steps and outcomes and impact and learnings. So you don't have to answer straight away when you're asked. It's okay to think about it for a couple of seconds. We're academics. We believe in consideration and considered replies. It's okay to ask for clarification. Do not ever, ever, ever speak just to the sole man in the room or the sole woman in the room. Always circle your eyes around. You can answer the question to the person that asked it, but address everyone. I have been in interviews where I've come out of them as a panel member and I've said, every time I asked a question, that person answered to the chair. Maybe the chair was male, maybe they weren't. And I felt not happy with that. I was not keen on that. I thought, what's going to happen in a highly sensitive workplace where academics have frail egos, we're under a lot of pressure. We are really sensitive to not being taken seriously in a meeting. So if you're doing it in the interview, it's not going to augur well later. Check your pose and mannerisms. I know I've been told I've got some dreadful ones in interviews, and I've seen it. But one, I remember I was my sleeve kept slipping down, so I kept tucking it up. I saw someone in the room looking at my sleeve. I kept chucking it up. Okay, better not do that. Another interview back when I was doing a mock interview at uni for a journalism role, I was told I slouched in the interview. So just check your mannerisms and watch where people are looking. And don't underplay or overplay your abilities. I have a colleague who always downplays her abilities. I have colleagues that overplay them. Just be confident in what you've achieved. That's it. You don't have to brag. You don't have to underplay or overplay. And when you're lining up, I think that's my last one. When you're lining up outside, and other candidates might be sitting there. We tried to have that not happen. Or when you come out and there's another candidate, be nice, because you don't know who that person is. That person, you may both end up getting hired. So always be collegial in that regard. So my last slide here, and apologies again, I will make sure I stick to time next time. When you are in the interview, if the interview panel look disinterested and you're like, oh my God, I'm really boring them, what's happening? Don't take it personally. It could be that they already know who they want to hire, and they have to interview 3 people. They want to give it to the person they've worked with as a sessional for 10 years, but they still have to advertise for people. It happens. I can't say much more, but it happens. So don't be offended. If they look disinterested, take it as a sign of, okay, something's going on here. Maybe just pep up a bit, just in case you're monotoning and you don't realize. But just when you walk out the room, just wear it. Okay. Obviously that was a time waster in one way, but I learned to practice my interview skills, so that was important. And these people might call me back if another role opens. And they also might be looking for the right fit, and you are just not the right fit. Take it as a blessing that you didn't get that role. And there'll always be someone in that interview panel. So there'll often be the chair, who's the person who's going to, may not be the person who decides, but they're the person who's managing the conversation with you. And there'll be someone you'll be working with closely, most likely, the second person in the room. There may be, there's always at Swinburne, an outsider, someone who is from a different area. And you will think, why the hell is someone from science on my panel? Oh my God. And we always have to explain that because under our HR rules, we need to have someone who is there so that it doesn't look like we're hiring people that so it indicates that there's somebody who can give an objective opinion about the applicant. So we're not hiring just that one person we want to hire. So that there's meant to be a kind of objective voice in the room from outside the discipline. So don't be confronted if you've looked up the people and there's someone who is clearly not related to your area. Sometimes there's someone from HR. So just because there has to be, not always. So sometimes there'll be somebody who isn't really that interested. That could be. So pick that out. That's okay. Always smile and work hard to not have a resting mean face. I say this from being on interview panels where we've had some applicants where I know them and they are just amazing, but my God, they have such a scary listening face. They're scowling when they listen. Don't do that. We interviewed someone and there was 3 of us interviewing and I didn't even notice. I knew the person, so I didn't even notice. The 2 other people in the room straight away when that person candidate walked out said, oh my God, the resting mean face on that person. Whoa. And I was like, they are not like that at all. I said, they're just wanting to make sure they answer properly. And they're like, well, we'll take your word for it. So that was a real lesson for me, actually, is to always control your face. So, and I do this a lot when I'm listening, but I have to not do that if I'm in an interview and as a panelist too. So do not come in with your student feedback and slap it on the table and say, oh, here's my student feedback. They will ask you for it if they need it. You can include your ratings in your CV. It's just seen as pressure for the panel to look at something straight away when they've got an agenda. You are there to help them move through their agenda. They don't need you waylaying them for time. And if they start asking, if they all lean forward quickly enough, start asking you something, then and they're probing, then keep an eye on, listen for what they're really looking for. So it's probably you've hit on something that's going to be really useful in the role, and they want to know more. That was the year I won the teaching award. So my class was really fulfilling, and they're like, oh, I won a teaching award. Tell us more. So you need to look for those in points, because that's how you know when you're reading the room, they want to know more about that. And that's where the follow-up questions will come from. And the more questions you get asked, the more likely you are to get the role. It's very rare that we run through all the questions with no follow-ups and give that person the role. We really drill in when we know we want the role. We want that person for the role. So that gives you an overview. And look how late I am. My gosh, so sorry. Open it up for additional questions for anyone. Stop sharing. Jamie, you have to teach me some tips on how to keep to time in these. My lectures don't run over, but these do. All right, questions. Thank you for staying with me. Apologies for making you late. No more questions? I will send you out everyone here. I'm just going to take a snap of everyone. I know that there, Ali was here too. A snap, and I'm going to send you all out the a list of, well, it's on the slide. So this, if you're going for a professional role at a university and you'd like to know what questions they ask, just email me and I'll send you that. I probably shouldn't be sending you the full list from Swinburne as a mass email, but I will send it to you if you ask me to. Oh, sorry, got 2 new messages. Okay, good. All right, terrific. Okay, excellent. Now, if you ever need a referee, you please feel free to ask me. I'm happy to do that. And happy to look over applications too if you're applying anytime. And the best way to start moving into these roles is to start with guest lecturing. Guest lecturing is the best way. A little short 10-minute spot. These HDR panels that we run, sometimes we ask you to come and talk, then be on a panel. That should go in your CV. All right, should we leave it there? Stop recording.